deceiving the country.
Griff Jenkins is live in Washington, D.C. with the brand new Fallout. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Jillian and Rob. You know, Omarosa was first known to us as that villainous former reality TV star. Now she's the former senior White House advisor who once held the title of Director of Communications for Public Liaison. Well, she's making strong claims against the president in a tell-all book.
Donald Trump is a con and has been masquerading as someone who is actually open to engaging with diverse communities. But when he talks that way, the way he did on this tape, it confirmed that he is truly a racist.
Raised this morning over whether she violated national security. In her interview on Meet the Press, Omarosa played the audio of what she claims was her firing by Chief of Staff John Kelly, suggesting Kelly threatened to damage her reputation. But she made that secret recording inside the most secure place in the White House, the Situation Room. Now, under national security protocols, the Situation Room is a SCIF, or sensitive compartmented information facility, where cell phones or recording devices are strictly forbidden. The White House is responding, Sarah Sanders saying in a statement, the very idea a staff member would sneak a recording device into the White House Situation Room shows a blatant disregard for our national security, and then to brag about it on national television further proves the lack of character and integrity of this disgruntled former White House employee. Kellyanne Conway is also calling Omarosa's credibility into question.
Whether it's 30 pieces of silver or a 7-figure book advance for you, your publicist, your ghostwriters, and others, all that's changed was this book deal and her being fired. So I think he probably feels very betrayed.
Now the nation will decide whether Omarosa is a whistleblower or a fame seeker. The president, however, has decided he's weighing in, calling the former aide a lowlife. Rob, Jillian.
All right. Thank you, Griff. Continue to follow that. A Fox News alert, another deadly weekend in Chicago, even after the city deploys hundreds of extra police officers amid a surge in gun violence. At least 29 shootings rocking the city from Friday evening through Sunday afternoon. Those shootings killing 2 people. The city adding 600 officers to patrol crime-ridden neighborhoods after 71 people were shot, 12 of them killed last weekend.
All right, new details on that airline, the passenger plane that was stolen straight from the Seattle-Tacoma airport. The FBI recovering the data recorder from that crash site, and it's been given to the NDSB to review. The remains of airport employee Richard Russell were among the wreckage there. The Horizon Air baggage handler stealing the plane, performing flips and turns for more than an hour before crashing on a remote island. Russell, who is not a licensed pilot, telling air traffic control playing video games helped him learn to fly that 76-seat plane. Nobody else was on board. Nobody hurt on the ground either.
Police set to give an update today on the search for missing Iowa student Molly Tibbetts. Her dad remaining hopeful, telling Fox News the 20-year-old is firm in her faith, always relying on prayer.
Molly's very spiritual. I think there's a real power in the ability to pull Molly back from wherever she is. So everybody pray and everybody think positive thoughts.
Molly went missing more than 3 weeks ago while on a run in her hometown of Brooklyn, Iowa. The reward for bringing her home is growing to $331,000.
Emotions in our nation's capital overnight, dueling political protests, leftist groups swarming Washington to shut down a Unite the Right rally. Fox News correspondent Lauren Blanchard has more.
They were bracing for chaos, but police on Sunday managed to keep the peace, saying only 1 arrest was made during a day of competing political protests. Demonstrators gathering for the Unite the Right 2 rally to mark 1 year since the first in Charlottesville, Virginia. Police formed a protective bubble around the white nationalists as they marched to the White House, met by shouting counter-protesters. Wet weather likely keeping many people away and forcing an early shutdown. Only a couple dozen white nationalists attended the event. Still, Unite the Right organizer Jason Kessler believes freedom of expression, which is what he says is their core mission, was accomplished.
We did a peaceful rally and we upheld free speech.
While hundreds of counter-protesters also marched to Lafayette Square.
Our message is against racism, hate, xenophobia. It's for, our democratic principles that every person is created equal to every other person.
At the same time, over 100 miles away in Charlottesville, scuffles broke out. Unite the Right had tried to bring the rally back to the city, but was denied a permit because of last year's deadly violence. Police did make at least 4 arrests, most for disorderly conduct. On Twitter over the weekend, President Trump said he condemns all types of racism, drawing heat from critics who likened the comment to last year when the president said both sides were to blame for the violence. Rob, Jillian?
All right, Lauren, thanks. The president's critics quick to frame the rally as the president's fault, even after he denounced all forms of racism.
Pastor Darrell Scott, member of the president's executive transition team, says while the left forms its talking points around a racial divide, the White House is getting results for urban communities.
I think it's very unfortunate that there is a faction in America that wanted violence and bloodshed. They wanted chaos, confusion, rioting, just so they could have a reason to accuse the president or blame the president for this. I don't think the racial divide in America is as pronounced as the left-wing media would try to make it appear to be. They're using race as a political ploy to garner votes. When I first met President Trump over maybe around 7 years ago, he said, I really believe unemployment, underemployment, and depressed living conditions contribute to a lot of the crime and chaos that the urban community encounters. He said this to me 7 years ago, and we're seeing this plan, this initiative being implemented now.
And the president continues to remind the public that under his policies, we have seen the lowest African-American and Hispanic unemployment rates ever recorded.
Lindsey Graham slamming the DOJ. The South Carolina senator taking issue with Bruce Ohr investigating President Trump. That's because the senior DOJ official's wife was working for the opposition research firm that produced the controversial anti-Trump dossier.
These investigations against Trump were corrupt to the core. They gave Clinton a pass. Bruce Ohr was at least unethical. We need a special counsel to look at all things Department of Justice and FBI when it came to the Trump investigation, particularly the counterintelligence investigation.
Ohr is reportedly scheduled to face the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees on August 28th. President Trump set to sign a huge defense bill today, giving the military a big boost. Our commander-in-chief heading to Fort Drum in upstate New York, where he'll sign the $717 billion bill into law. The annual defense budget clears the way for military pay raises, an increase in troops across the board, and improvements to equipment.
All right, the president praising bikers who say that they will boycott Harley-Davidson. President Trump tweeting, quote, many Harley-Davidson owners plan to boycott the company if manufacturing moves overseas. Great. Most other companies are coming in our direction, including Harley competitors. A really bad move. U.S. will soon have a level playing field or better. The company says it prefers to operate from the U.S., but might have no choice. European countries are threatening tariffs on the industry in retaliation to the president's steel and aluminum tariffs.
Were you watching? Brooks Koepka wins his first PGA championship. The U.S. Open champion closing out the edge of your seat competition, shooting 16 under par for the tournament.
It was a great Sunday of golf. Wow. Koepka able to stay ahead of a major push from Tiger Woods.
I saw you tweeting about that.
Oh, it was so fun yesterday to watch this. One of his best tournaments, definitely his best major in years, putting him just 2 shots back for a second-place finish. He came out firing yesterday. Koepka, though, now the 5th player to ever win the U.S. Open and the PGA in the same year. He is really on fire.
Yeah.
New star. Yeah.
All right. It is 10 minutes after the hour. Insider threats. Brand new fears about airport safety after an employee steals a plane in Seattle. Why our next guest says you would expect big changes before your next flight.
And does God belong in public schools? The state making a brand new push for students to have faith.
Baby, I know you're asking me to stay. Say please don't.
All right, breaking overnight, investigators recovering the data recorder from the stolen Horizon Air jet that was hijacked and then crashed by a ground worker in Seattle.
How equipped are airports to stop insider threats, and how worried should you be before boarding your next flight? flight. Joining us now is aviation analyst Mike Boyd. Thank you for joining us this morning. So for those of us who've never flown a plane, I know this may seem like a silly, dumb question, but can you explain how this could have happened? I mean, unlike a car, planes don't have keys. What's the first step in making this happen?
Well, it's real easy. A lot of activity goes on there. Airplanes move, airplanes go. Trusted employees, so it isn't out of range to see someone who might have gotten on an airplane and taxied it. So that's probably how it happened. This is like having a Marine platoon and the corporal decides to go rogue. I don't know how they could have avoided this, but they will in the future.
I mean, I just have a question. Is it that easy to maneuver a plane? This is a rather big jet, 76-seater, or I think it was a prop plane. But is it that easy to just take one and start doing loop-de-loops and fly? I mean, I thought it was a very complicated process.
Well, it'd be very easy to move the airplane because that's what's going on all day long. You take a look at the pictures. This guy was in the business of doing that there, and he had no background problems whatsoever. This is one of those things that's such a one-off that I don't know how we can avoid it in the future. It's like if you can't trust the employees, you got a problem. But there will be better security in the future in terms of who gets into a cockpit.
So for those people who might say, well, geez, now I'm afraid to go to that airport. Now I'm afraid of this happening again. Now I'm afraid to fly. What would you say to them?
Then stay home and take Amtrak because this is not a major security issue. This is a breakdown, but no one should be concerned about this. I mean, this has gone on for years. I've had access to airplanes. My teams have had access to airplanes. We've never had this happen before, really, in the U.S. So it's not something anyone should be concerned about. Actually, it's the safest way to travel, regardless of what just happened on Friday.
It does seem like a bit of an anomaly, and obviously, if there were people on the plane, access to that cockpit wouldn't be possible for this person. But is this kind of a, I mean, right now we're seeing this thing where, people are killing themselves in such bizarre ways. Suicides are almost like a statement at this point. How do you prevent something like this from happening? How would you prevent this from happening again?
Well, it's very hard to anticipate someone going bonkers. Yeah. Apparently, this guy wasn't like, this has nothing to do with what happened, say, at German Wings, where you had a troubled pilot who was taking drugs. Known and back. This is a guy that went out every day, moved airplanes around, parked airplanes, de-iced airplanes, worked with his coworkers. From what I've seen, it'd be very hard to anticipate how this could have happened. The big thing is, how do you learn to fly an airplane that way?
Right. Well, he allegedly says he learned through video games, which is insane. That's the world we're living in right now. Real quick before we let you go, the flight recorder was recovered. What type of information do you think we can find out from that? Probably
nothing new. You have a voice recorder and a recorder that records what went on with the airplane, flap settings, power settings, things like that. It won't, I don't think, give us any information on why this happened, why this guy went off the deep end. But you can bet on this. In the future, this happening again is going to be almost impossible to pull off. They'll put in new procedures so this doesn't happen.
Yeah. Steals a plane, does some loop-de-loops, and then crashes into an island. What a crazy story from over the weekend. Mike Boyd, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
It is 18 minutes after the hour. President Trump has battled the media from the very beginning, but now the media is fighting back. Why more than 100 newspapers are working together to take down the president?
And a reverend slamming Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel for neglecting and oppressing people as that city reels from another bloody weekend. Carly Shimkus here with that reverend's message coming up.
Through the door after 6 a.m.
Good morning to you and welcome back. Today, West Virginia lawmakers will consider impeaching every Supreme Court justice in the state, all accused of corruption, neglect of duty, and incompetence. 3 of them allegedly spending nearly $750,000 in taxpayer dollars on lavish office renovations. Former Justice Menace Ketchum resigned last month before pleading guilty to felony fraud.
Wow. All right, God may soon be getting a place back inside Alabama schools. One county school board working to craft a policy next month that would allow them to display the U.S. motto, "In God We Trust." This coming after a state law gave schools the option to do so. Legal battles are expected as critics want to keep church and state separated. Tennessee recently passed a similar law that requires the motto in all of their schools.
Denouncing a top Democrat. Police firing back at Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren after she called our justice system, quote, racist front to back.
Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 and Sirius XM 115 is here with how the outrage has even gotten all the way up to the Attorney General here, Carly.
Yeah, that's right. And good morning, guys. So top police officials in Massachusetts say her comments could actually increase hostility towards officers. A Massachusetts Chief of Police Association President Steve Wozner saying, quote, labeling the entire criminal justice profession as racist spreads false and damaging information about our members. Now, Attorney General Jeff Sessions also criticized Warren during a speech in Georgia, saying a slander of every law officer and every prosecutor in America. And frankly, I think it is an insult to their families and to the crime victims they have helped to face their attacker. Now, Warren addressed the situation and the fallout, saying, I spoke about an entire system, not individuals, and will continue to work on reforms to make the criminal justice system fairer. Well, many on social media also weighing in on her remarks. Steve says she needs to apologize to every officer. Debbie on Twitter weighing in, saying, I'm glad the police chief called her on it. She should be ashamed of herself making remarks like that. So that's how that's shaping up today.
Rahm Emanuel facing some more backlash. It continues.
That's right. A Chicago reverend, his name is Ira Acri. He slammed the city's mayor, Rahm Emanuel, as violence continues to grip parts of the city. During an interview with NPR, he says, I cannot take him serious because for 7.5 years, he has neglected us. He has oppressed us. He has disinvested in us. Now, the reverend acknowledges that the violence in Chicago predates Mayor Rahm Emanuel's time in office, but he says that since he's been there, it's just gotten worse. A lot of folks on social media weighing in on this continued issue, very serious issue. One person on Twitter says the real question is, why do we keep voting Democrat? And another person chiming in saying, what took so long? Rahm needs to just quit. So a lot of people calling for him to leave his position of power. And by the way, 29 shootings this weekend alone, 2 of them deadly.
And that Reverend on Fox and Friends in the 8 o'clock hour coming up.
Very good.
And a big moment for a female Marine.
Yeah, a little girl power this morning. That's right. So for the first time in Marine Corps history, a woman is in charge of an infantry platoon. She's 24 years old. Her name is Marina Harrell. She leads 35 men. They're currently stationed in northern Australia. She was also the first woman to pass the Marine Corps infantry officer course. So a very impressive woman right here. How about that? Very cool.
That's crazy.
Isn't that amazing?
That's a tough job, too, to control all of those troops. Thank you so much, Carly. We appreciate it.
And thank you, Carly, for reminding me when she walked in the studio. She said, oh, someone has a birthday today.
Yes.
And the wonderful coworker I am, I forgot. Happy birthday.
And that would be wrong.
I'm 21 years old.
Thanks for the reminder.
I can finally drink legally.
Yes, very mature for 21 years old.
Been waiting a long time. Carly, thanks.
See ya.
26 minutes after the hour, it's become a new tactic of the resistance, targeting Trump administration members in public.
Now a restaurant is getting death threats for serving Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Why isn't it okay to be civil to our leaders anymore? Our political panel is on deck to debate it. Stay right there. Back with a Fox News alert, the U.S. stepping in after the Taliban launches a massive attack in Afghanistan. A U.S.-led NATO mission hitting the terror group with air and drone strikes days after the Taliban killed more than 200 people in 4 different areas. Military advisors are now on the ground in the city of Ghazni, where fighting has raged for more than 3 days.
The leaders of both North and South Korea agreeing to a third in-person meeting. Kim Jong-un and President Moon Jae-in will meet sometime next month in the North Korean capital of Pyongyang. The 2 nations have yet to say what will be discussed. It would be their third summit since just April. This agreement comes as new concerns are being raised about the North's nuclear arsenal.
President Trump hitting other nations where it hurts their wallets. New sanctions and tariffs sending global markets into a tailspin.
Jillian Turner has the very latest from Washington.
The Trump administration's foreign policy team has capped off a week of sanctioning and punishing foreign adversaries across multiple regions, from the Middle East to East Asia. New penalties for Turkey, Russia, and Iran featured front and center and sent global financial markets into a tailspin. It began on Wednesday with the announcement that Washington would sanction the Putin government in response to their use of chemical weapons in the UK several months ago. But still no word from the administration about punishment for Russian election interference, despite increasing concern from the president's own party.
They are meddling in the 2018 election. I'm 100% certain that they are continuing to meddle in our election. They intend to disrupt the 2018 election.
Then Friday, President Trump announced new sanctions against Turkey, a NATO ally, via Twitter. He authorized, quote, a doubling of tariffs on steel and aluminum that caused the Turkish lira to immediately take a nosedive. The president went on to say that U.S., quote, relations with Turkey are not good at this time, a reality that GOP lawmakers seem to agree with.
We're not going to have a normal relationship with Turkey until they let Pastor Brunson out. The charges against him are complete shams.
All this as the Iranian national economy faces severe strain even before the so-called snapback sanctions officially take effect. Officials from Germany, the UK, and France have already responded with harsh criticism to the reimposition of those sanctions. In Washington, Jillian Turner, Fox News.
All right, President Trump's attorney unloading on the New York Times reporter who said this.
What he said in that interview is that the president's story, if told to Mueller, would put him into perjury. Right. So what he's saying is the president's story is wrong. It's a lie.
Rudy Giuliani says this guy's got it all wrong, now slamming that man for dismissing his concerns about a perjury trap coming from the special counsel.
I don't know if he's deliberately being like that or he's a complete moron. But the reality is you can be accused of perjury when you're telling the absolute truth.
Very candid Giuliani there. He says many in the media don't fully understand how to follow the Trump team's legal arguments. Prosecutors expected to rest their case against Paul Manafort today. It's unclear if his lawyers plan on calling any of their own witnesses to the stand after that. The former Trump campaign manager has been on trial for bank fraud and tax evasion since July 31st. Prosecutors have focused heavily on Manafort's lavish spending habits, which has drawn some very sharp criticism from the judge in that case, T.S. Eliot. All right, candidates in 5 states making their final push to voters, this ahead of primaries in Connecticut, Minnesota, Vermont, South Dakota, and Wisconsin tomorrow. There, a crowded field of 8 Democrats are trying to unseat Republican Governor Scott Walker and a pair of Republicans battling over the Senate nomination, hoping to beat incumbent Democrat Tammy Baldwin in November. Voters will also narrow the field in the congressional district held by Speaker Paul Ryan, who is retiring at the very end of his term. Jillian.
A Texas restaurant is getting death threats and shut down its social media, all for serving Attorney General Jeff Sessions over the weekend. So why can't we be civil to our leaders anymore? Joining me now to debate is Republican strategist Chris Nyweim and Democratic strategist Rochelle Ritchie. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Guys, you know, here we are having this conversation again. Chris, do you see an end in sight?
I have no idea. I mean, we've come to the point where throwing a woman that's serving this country out of a restaurant for going to eat is something that's politically possible. And it's essentially someone who serves food. I mean, they didn't even know who the guest was going to be, and now they're having to sort of backtrack and deal with their business. Doesn't seem like free speech to me. It seems like it's a little bit ridiculous, and it's a very mean message to be sending.
Rochelle?
Well, look, if we are trying to determine how civil discourse towards our leaders has become the new normal, then we just need to look at the commander in tweets, Donald Trump. I mean, just last week, he insulted Jeff Sessions, saying that he was scared, stiff, and missing in action.
That's not confronting someone, though, in a restaurant and making people forced
Well, we're talking about what happened in Texas.
A restaurant.
Well, we're talking about what happened in Texas. And from my understanding, this restaurant owner actually posted a photo of with Jeff Sessions.
On social media. And it's getting death threats from it.
Yes, on social media. And no, he shouldn't be getting death threats for it. But what I'm saying is that this has become the new normal. I mean, Donald Trump himself has attacked Jeff Sessions on social media. In March, he called him disgraceful. He's called Justice Ginsburg. He's called her an incompetent judge and dumb. Of course, he loves to attack the IQ of Maxine Waters. So no one is exempt from this president's pettiness on social media.
Chris, don't you see this hurting the Democrats at some point?
Well, I agree with Rochelle. It's petty. I mean, you look at Attorney General Eric Holder, whose priority during his tenure serving President Obama was to focus on legal rights for terrorists, trying to secure them attorneys. You look at Rahm Emanuel, who suppressed the killing of a black teen so he could be reelected. You look at Bernie Sanders, wants to give veterans free dental care. We'd love to have it, Bernie, but we can't even get in to see doctors. Let's talk about the issues. And then you talk about women's rights. You want to throw a woman out of a restaurant? Rochelle, you got to help out your party. You got to get them back on track, on message. Who cares about tweets? You know, the president wants to critique.
Who cares about tweets? Why don't tweets matter? How is it possible that the president of the United States continues to insult people? He's insulted FBI, members of the FBI just this week, calling them clowns and losers. He also brought up Lisa Page and called her the lover when he's the one that's actually paying off his infidelities.
But
right
Rochelle,
now.
this is something that has gone. I mean, this is just absolutely getting to the point where it's insane. Let's just go ahead and take a look at let's take a look at some of these examples that have happened in recent months.
I just wanted to urge you to resign because of what you're doing to the environment in our country.
Nelson, you're a villain, locking up immigrant children.
Why did you leave my husband alone?
Why are you separating families?
Why did you leave my husband alone?
Stephen Miller! Deport Stephen Miller! Deport Stephen Miller!
Look, we're at the point now where this is affecting everyday business owners. This is, I mean, some people who are at these restaurants where some of these things are happening, like if you've got kids there, are you worried that this is going to get out of hand and I better leave the restaurant before this gets too crazy? I mean, people are afraid when they see stuff like this happening, Rochelle.
Well, look, I think it is very unfortunate. I mean, when you look at it, it kind of reminds me of what was happening during the civil rights era with African Americans who were being harassed in restaurants during sit-ins. I don't think this is right. I don't think that people should be harassed while they're eating dinner. But again, we were, you know, from my understanding, that it was a photo. But I think the First Lady, Melania Trump, has a great campaign, the Be Best campaign, and it's something that we can all apply to our daily lives. And we should start with her husband.
Chris, final word.
Well, I agree with Rochelle on the fact that, you know, we need to protect people's safety. We shouldn't have the kind of discourse we do. But the president's a rough and tumble dude. That's why we like him. And he doesn't fall for these sort of games where he gets put in a corner. I mean, he's focused on substance. That's why the economy's up and so many other things are happening. So, but I agree about the discourse thing.
All right, Chris, Rochelle, thank you for joining us. At the end of the day, we're all humans. Let's just treat each other with respect, right? Thank you, guys. It is 38 minutes after the hour. Sheriff Scott Israel was the face of the failed response to the Parkland school massacre. Now his department is giving back to school safety. Our next guest, conservative student Kyle Kashuv, is demanding Sheriff Israel resign. Why he says Broward County's top boss is a hypocrite. And forget the straws, there's a brand new plan to ban something you use every day. The proposal that's sure to spark fire. But first, a look at weather across the country.
I'm slipping into the lava, and I'm drinking from your.
All right, welcome back. More than 100 newspapers now answering the Boston Globe's call for a war of words against President Trump's attacks on the media. The newspaper telling CNN they expect that number to grow this week. The Globe is asking newspapers nationwide to publish editorials on Thursday against the president in what it is calling the dirty war on the free press.
A Democratic gun control advocate accused of shooting her husband to death. Former Georgia congressional candidate Kelly Collins charged with murder after the man who was also her campaign treasurer was found dead. Officials say Collins was made the sole beneficiary of his insurance policy weeks before his death. The Democrats' failed platform included strict gun control measures to protect the community. Collins dropped out of the race ahead of the primary.
Resign in shame. That message from former Marjory Stoneman Douglas student Kyle Kashuv to Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel.
Israel, known as being the man in charge during the botched response to the Parkland High School massacre, now featured in a back-to-school safety poster.
Kashuv, also the director of high school outreach for Turning Point USA, taking to Twitter to call out the embattled sheriff.
And Kyle joins us now this morning. Thank you for being here. We know that you've been outspoken about this. When you saw the back-to-school safety tips, what did you think?
It was absolutely horrendous that he did something like that.
Do you think that, I mean, does it just boggle the mind for you that he's had the audacity to stay in that position after what we saw at Parkland and with all the stories of the missed signs about the killer in this shooting, the fact that he's still there, what do you think?
So it's disgusting that he still is in that position and he's still doing his incompetent job there. So let me tell you what happened. So before the shooting, there were constant requests for the Broward Sheriff's Office to actually do adequate shooter training prevention programs, and they didn't do that. In addition to that, there were 78 calls to the Broward Sheriff's Department, and the reason why this animal wasn't arrested was because the sheriff had signed an agreement to synthetically reduce arrest rates of teens in order to get federal bonds. There's another aspect of this, whereas after the shooting, the sheriff had the audacity to go on national television and to blame the NRA, guns, in every single aspect, but to take responsibility. He lied to the faces of victims and the families of the victims on national television. And then he also had the audacity to blame his subordinates for his inactions and incompetence. He refuses to take absolutely any responsibility for his actions. And in addition, what occurred was, what's the biggest telling sign of his incompetence and why he needs to be fired immediately, was that his own deputies gave him a vote of no confidence.
Kyle, you sent out a tweet blasting the sheriff, and you said, quote, "You're an absolute disgrace. Putting your face on anything to do with school safety is a slap in the face to my classmates and 17 families that are still mourning. Resign in shame." You go on to call him a coward. Look, it's been a number of months now since this happened. How are you?
Well, look, me and my fellow students were still not safe in school. So yesterday, I got a call from a fellow student, a fellow classmate of mine. She's liberal, and she calls me crying hysterically that school starts on the 15th and we're still not safe. Nothing has been done to secure our schools. And the metal detectors that were promised by the sheriff and by our superintendent Runcie have still not been implemented. We are still unsafe and vulnerable at our schools.
Well, we certainly don't like to hear that, and hopefully they can get coordinated with what they need to do to keep you guys safe in that school in case there is any idea of a repeat attack there. Kyle, we want to move on to a second topic here, and this is a little different, but it's regarding these emails that have surfaced from a school in Massachusetts that essentially show teachers trying to mold their agenda for what they want their students to experience in the school, and kind of maybe showing a political bias here. We wanted to just get your general reaction to something like this. You're an outsider at your school with your beliefs. How do you feel about this story coming out of Massachusetts?
I mean, it's quite sad, but this is absolutely believable, and this is what has been occurring in our public education systems. What has been occurring is that there's a constant push by the left to allow everything except diversity of thought. And what occurs is these teachers, they go through our education system, they become indoctrinated, they go to college, they get fully indoctrinated, they come back to our school systems, and then they perpetuate this cycle of indoctrination. So what happens is my fellow students and I personally feel this, don't feel safe to speak out. There's no ability to speak your mind because not only do you get shunned by teachers, you get shunned by the entire atmosphere. So what occurs is that teachers are actually forcing and making it quite difficult for students to speak their mind. You know, and even in an elementary, middle school, and high school level, it's very hard to speak your mind. I've seen this personally. When I go on campus, I see that there's an atmosphere where it's very tough for conservatives to speak their mind, and this occurs from teachers, from administrators, from students, and there's an atmosphere of just political bias. And I think that something has to be done, and that the only solution to doing this at a high school level, and I've said this time and time again, we have to elect school board members that are competent, that can make sure that we have superintendents that can ensure that teachers are objective and that there isn't political bias in our school systems.
Let's go ahead and take a look at this statement from the principal, Henry J. Turner, on supporting the teachers after those emails that Rob was talking about were released. And it says, quote, "The email exchange demonstrates our teachers discussing ways in which to allow thoughtful discussion and exploration of different perspectives on controversial topics while ensuring students know that any form of hate speech is unacceptable. We support our teachers' emails and ongoing dialogue about these values, and we support their right to grapple with these issues." Only in one of the emails, one of the teachers said that he's finding it difficult in the current climate to teach kids to appreciate other perspectives. Shouldn't our teachers be teaching everyone in schools to appreciate other perspectives?
That is absolutely true, and I think it's disgusting that an administrator has the audacity to say that what these teachers are doing are rightful in protecting them. I mean, it's clear that these teachers are politically biased, and aren't being fair to their students, and we have to make sure that our students have a safe environment to express their beliefs, and that's not the case.
Yeah. Oppressing the opposition is a central tenet of fascism, something you've experienced yourself, being an outsider on what you believe after the shooting at your school. Kyle, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it. We really do. Hope you're doing okay.
Thank you.
All right.
It is 49 minutes after the hour. President Trump versus Harley Davidson. What the tariff tensions mean for motorcycle companies staying in America.
And this is not a fairy tale. How deputies put their epic rope throwing skills to use to save women stranded on an inflatable rainbow unicorn. That's right. All of that is true. And it's coming up.
President Trump versus Harley Davidson.
Tracy Carrasco from our sister network Fox Business here with the president's push for a boycott on a company he once embraced so much, Tracy.
Yes, that's right. And tensions between President Trump and Harley Davidson have been brewing for months. But yesterday, President Trump tweeted that he would support a boycott against Harley Davidson. Let's take a look at a tweet that he sent out. The president said, quote, many Harley Davidson owners plan to boycott the company if manufacturing moves overseas. Great. Most other companies are coming in our direction, including Harley competitors. A really bad move. U.S. will soon have a level playing field or better. You'll remember back in June, Harley announced that it would move production of bikes sold in Europe out of the United States as a result of these retaliatory tariffs, steel tariffs imposed by the EU. This increased duties on motorcycles imported to the EU to 31% from just 6%.
So we've got some food delivery robots.
Yes, this is the next wave of food delivery, sidewalk robots. So take a look. There's that little guy. He is one of 24 that roam the campus of UC Berkeley in California and surrounding areas, making deliveries to students and residents. So according to TechCrunch, Kiwi, the company behind this robot, has already made about 10,000 deliveries. So they want to expand this to other cities. Could you imagine that robot here in New York City?
No.
You'd get trampled.
Oh, yeah. A cab would run it over in 2 seconds.
But at least that thing isn't texting while walking. Everyone's texting while walking in New York City.
And they trip over the robot.
Yeah.
I'm going to open the top up and take somebody's sandwich. Sorry. What are you going to do about it?
Thanks, Tracy.
It's right there.
Thanks.
Time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. First, the good. Every dog has its day, but for these pups, it was Sunday. 100 dogs splashing at the annual Dogapalooza. Look at them go in Denver. It gives dogs a free one-day pass to jump in a public pool and doggy paddle before they close for the season.
Oh,
and hopefully they change the water in the pool.
Yeah. Next to that, forget straws. The EU wants to get rid of matches. Back in May, the ingredients to make Strike Anywhere matches were banned. Under this plan, they would be phased out and